The hum of machinery filled the room as Dr. Kate Albright adjusted the settings on the control panel, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. With practiced precision, she had been working on this project for years, but today felt different. Something in the air crackled with anticipation, a sense that they were about to uncover something far more profound than anyone had ever imagined. Her colleagues moved quietly around the lab, their eyes focused on the large metallic structure embedded in the ground. The artifact they had discovered only a few days ago had resisted all attempts to analyze it, but Kate felt something deep within her, a connection to it that none of the others seemed to share. She had spent countless hours poring over ancient texts and maps, trying to decode the messages that hinted at the existence of this place, and now she could feel it calling to her. The chamber was buried deep beneath the surface of the planet, a place untouched by time and untouched by civilization. An entire world of secrets lay hidden here, and Kate had been chosen to unravel them. She crouched before the artifact, her breath shallow, her hands trembling, as she traced the intricate symbols etched into its surface. These markings were like nothing she had ever seen. They were both alien and familiar all at once, as if they belonged to a race that had transcended the very limits of time and space, and yet were somehow part of her own history. With a deep breath, she pressed her palm against the smooth surface of the artifact and waited for something to happen. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. At first there was nothing, no shift in the air, no change in the energy around her, but then a faint hum began to build in the air. It was low at first, barely perceptible, but it grew steadily louder until it felt as though the entire chamber was vibrating in tune with her heartbeat. The air seemed to thicken, as if something was pushing its way to the surface, something ancient and powerful. Then the voice came. It wasn't a sound that could be heard in the traditional sense. It was a presence, a feeling, an intelligence that reached out to her directly, without words, without sound, but with undeniable force. Humanity is an unknown variable. The voice said, the words resonating inside her mind, the deep and unsettling truth. You are not what you believe yourselves to be. Kate recoiled instinctively, her heart racing, as she pulled her hand away from the artifact. But the voice did not fade. It grew stronger, more insistent. You are a product of a forgotten design, a creation forged by the hands of the progenitors to serve as the ultimate force in the galaxy. The voice continued, its tone calm, yet filled with an undeniable authority. You are humanity, and your time has come. Kate's breath caught in her throat, her mind racing to process what had just happened. How could this be possible? How could she be hearing something like this? The artifact flickered, its surface glowing with an unnatural light, and then the voice spoke again. The Eldari Collective is coming for you. They have sensed your awakening. You must prepare. The voice warned her before everything went silent. The hum of the chamber faded, and the room was still once more. Kate stood frozen for several moments, her mind struggling to grasp what she had just experienced, the weight of the words pressing down on her. She turned slowly to look at the others, but they seemed unaware of the shift that had just taken place. They were still immersed in their own work, their eyes glued to the monitors. She knew one thing now: humanity was not just facing an alien invasion, it was facing a war for its very existence. The days following the discovery of the artifact felt like a blur to Kate. The words of the voice still echoed in her mind, but the truth was impossible to ignore. The Eldari Collective, a name that had once seemed like a distant myth, was now a present reality. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything was moving far too quickly, like the unraveling of a thread that had already begun to pull at the very fabric of human history. She sat in the briefing room with a handful of military officials, their eyes trained on the holographic projections of the alien fleet now in Earth's orbit. They were vast and terrifying, their ships unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Silent, intimidating monoliths that seemed to defy the natural order of space. The Eldari were here, and they had no intention of simply observing. Kate had been asked to provide an update on the artifact, but in truth, she had little to offer beyond the cryptic warning. We've tried to understand what the artifact actually is, she began, her voice calm despite the chaos swirling within her. But it's clear now that it's not just a relic. It's a key, a signal of sorts. The Eldari know we found it, and they're coming to stop us from using it." General Briggs, a hardened military officer with graying hair and a perpetually furrowed brow, leaned forward, his voice cold and direct. "And you're sure this? I, or whatever it is, was talking about an awakening. What does that mean? Are we talking about some kind of weapon?" Kate nodded, her eyes scanning the hologram of the alien fleet. She had no concrete answers, but she knew the voice had been clear in its message. It's something more than a weapon. Humanity was designed for something much greater. The Eldari are afraid of us, afraid of what we might become. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling in. The military leaders exchanged uneasy glances. No one knew how to respond to the idea that humanity wasn't just another species trying to survive. They were something engineered, created to be more. Outside the window of the facility, the sky seemed to be filled with the ominous presence of the Eldari ships. They hadn't attacked yet, but every passing hour made it clear that it was only a matter of time. Humanity's first direct contact with the galaxy's most feared empire had not been a friendly visit. It had been a declaration of war. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the AI's voice filled the room once again. This time, it was clear, direct, and urgent. "Activate the project, Dr. Albright. The time is now. The first sequence must begin. Humanity's potential must be unlocked. You cannot afford to wait." Kate's pulse quickened. "What sequence?" she asked aloud, her voice trembling slightly. She had no idea what the AI was asking of her, but there was no time to question. They were already under threat, and whatever this ancient plan was, it was humanity's only chance to stand against the Eldari. In the darkened room, with the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her, Kate knew there was no turning back. "Activate it," she whispered to herself. The AI responded immediately, and the screens in the room lit up, flashing with unknown symbols and diagrams. The project was no longer a theory. It was real. Humanity was about to become something else, something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. And as the first stage of the awakening sequence began, Kate couldn't help but wonder if they were ready for what they were about to unleash. The clock was ticking. The war had begun. The moment the activation sequence began, everything in Kate's body seemed to hum with energy. It was as if something deep within her was stirring, waking up after an eternity of slumber. As the holographic projections flickered around the room, Kate could feel the weight of what was happening. The artifact's power was now flowing through the system, feeding into humanity's genetic code. It was no longer just information, it was a transformation. She had unlocked something she couldn't yet fully comprehend, but there was no turning back now. In the control room, the military personnel stared at the screens as the systems hummed to life. The genetic modifications, the ones Kate had only read about in theory, were now being triggered in real time. The hum of machinery was deafening, and an eerie glow pulsed from the heart of the complex. Every soldier, every scientist, every person within the facility could feel it. It wasn't just technology that was changing, it was humanity itself. A voice crackled through the speakers. "Dr. Albright, we're reading significant changes in the soldiers' biochemistry. Something is happening to them." Kate turned toward the source of the voice. It was Sergeant Leo Vega, one of the military's most capable operatives. He had volunteered to be one of the first to undergo the modification process, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. "We've already seen an increase in reflex speed and muscle response," Leo said, his voice steady but laced with awe. "This isn't just enhanced strength. It's like, I can feel everything in my body differently. The way the air moves, the way the ground feels beneath my feet, it's all sharper." Kate nodded, her mind racing. "It's the modification. You're tapping into the latent abilities embedded in human DNA, things the progenitors must have left behind. You're unlocking the next phase of humanity's evolution." Leo's eyes narrowed, his hands flexing, as if testing the newfound strength in his limbs. "So we're becoming something else. Something more." Before Kate could respond, The sound of distant alarms cut through the air, followed by the frantic shouts of soldiers and technicians. The threat had arrived. The first Eldari ship had broken through the atmosphere, a colossal warship looming above the base like a dark shadow. The time for testing was over. Humanity's response had to come now. "Dr. Albright," Leo said, his voice unwavering, "what do we do now?" Kate's eyes locked onto the screen where the Eldari warship was slowly descending, its weapons primed. The humans, their genetic potential now unlocked, stood in the perfect position to take on the invaders. But they couldn't just rush into battle. They needed to make their move count. Humanity's strengths were not in their numbers, but in their ability to adapt, to think in ways that their enemies couldn't predict. "We hit them where they don't expect it," Kate said, her voice firm. "We don't engage them head-on. We use their own technology against them, sabotage their systems, create chaos." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. The humans in the room had always relied on traditional warfare, brute force, and firepower. But now they were about to fight the most advanced species in the galaxy, and brute force wouldn't work. It never had. "We make them underestimate us," Kate continued, her eyes burning with conviction. "And then we strike." As the soldiers prepared for what would surely be the first battle of humanity's existence, a quiet confidence began to settle over them. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future, for the future of every species in the galaxy. And they would do it on their own terms. The human resistance moved quickly, blending into the shadows of the Eldari base as the alien fleet loomed ominously in the sky. Kate's plan had worked. The first wave of soldiers, genetically enhanced and more powerful than anything the Eldari had ever encountered, took the fight directly to the invaders. But what she didn't expect was how swiftly things would escalate. The Eldari, though stunned by humanity's newfound abilities, adapted quickly. Their ships and soldiers were formidable, built for domination, and they were starting to fight back with lethal efficiency. Inside the Eldari stronghold, Kate had been separated from her team during the initial skirmish. As the battle raged outside, she found herself confined in a dark, sterile cell aboard one of the Eldari command ships. Her mind raced, trying to grasp what was happening. The transformation of humanity, the unlocking of their latent potential, had only just begun. Now, as she sat in the cold silence, the unsettling reality began to sink in. The Eldari weren't just here to destroy humanity. They were here to study it, to harness what made humanity so unique. In the dim light of her cell, Kate's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden sound. Mechanical, precise. The door to her cell slid open, revealing a figure, tall and foreboding, draped in sleek, black armor. The alien was unlike anything Kate had seen before, even in the holographic data gathered about the Eldari. This was not just a soldier. It was an elite commander, and the cold, calculating eyes of the creature locked onto hers as it stepped inside. "You are Dr. Kate Albright, the one who unlocked the potential of humanity." The Eldari spoke, its voice a smooth, melodic cadence that sent a chill down Kate's spine. It was speaking English, which only added to the dread crawling up her spine. "Do you understand what you've done?" Kate tried to remain calm, her mind working quickly. "I don't know what you mean," she said, standing tall, despite the fear swirling in her chest. "I awakened the weapon buried inside humanity's genetics, yes, but I didn't realize the full extent of what was happening." The Eldari commander tilted its head, its black eyes narrowing. "That is why we are here. The progenitors, the ones who created you, left behind a hidden truth. Humanity was not a mere accident of evolution. You are an engineered species, a weapon designed to be wielded when the galaxy's balance tips too far into chaos." Kate's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "We were created to fight." The Eldari's cold smile sent a shiver through her. "Not fight. Dr. Albright, you were created to be the ultimate force of nature. The progenitors gave you the potential to reshape the galaxy in their image, to undo the reign of those who would dominate and control. But you're not the only ones who knew this, Kate said, her voice steadier than she felt. The Eldari, you, have been trying to weaponize humans. You've been studying us for centuries. Why? The commander's smile faded into a more serious expression. We feared you. The galaxy's greatest threat is not war, it is change. You, humanity, are the wild card. Your unpredictability, your ability to adapt and evolve, makes you an uncontrollable force. If left unchecked, you will become a new kind of empire, a power greater than the Eldari collective ever was. Kate's stomach twisted in disbelief. This was why the Eldari had come. They weren't just here to conquer. They were here to destroy the potential humanity now possessed. Before she could respond, the commander took a step forward, its expression darkening. But the true power lies with you, Dr. Albright. You are the key. The humans you've awakened, they will decide the fate of this war. Suddenly, the room seemed to grow darker, the air colder. Kate understood with terrifying clarity. The battle wasn't just for survival anymore. It was for the very soul of humanity. And the war had only just begun. Kate's heart raced as the Eldari commander's words echoed in her mind. She had always suspected that humanity's potential was unique, but now she understood. The Eldari didn't just fear them. They hunted them because of what they could become. The thought of humanity becoming a force that could reshape the galaxy, an uncontrollable empire, was enough to make even the mightiest of the Eldari quiver. But Kate's resolve hardened. She couldn't let fear dictate humanity's future. The Eldari had underestimated them once. Now, it was time to turn the tables. The commander stepped back, seemingly aware of the change in Kate's demeanor. I suggest you think carefully, Dr. Albright. You are in no position to defy us. You may have unlocked humanity's potential, but you are still at our mercy. Kate's eyes flared with defiance. You underestimate us, Commander. I may be trapped here, but humanity is not defined by its circumstances. You'll see soon enough. With a swift motion, the Eldari turned and vanished through the doorway, leaving Kate alone once again in the cold silence of the cell. But she wasn't broken. She wasn't alone. She had a plan, and the resistance on Earth was growing stronger by the day. The door to her cell slid open again, but this time, it wasn't the Eldari. It was a familiar face, Sergeant Leo Vega, his expression tense but determined. He had somehow infiltrated the Eldari ship with a small team of resistance fighters, their enhanced abilities allowing them to move in ways that even the Eldari couldn't predict. You're not alone, Dr. Albright, Leo said, his voice low. We've got your back. Kate's eyes brightened with a mixture of relief and urgency. I didn't expect you to be here so soon. We move fast. Your escape is already in motion, Leo said, offering her a datapad. We've been sabotaging the Eldari ships from within. We've also found something important. The Eldari were keeping a secret. They have a weapon, one that can neutralize the potential humanity now possesses. Kate's heart skipped a beat. A weapon? To stop what we've unlocked. Leo nodded grimly. They've been studying us for years. They know we're capable of becoming something they can't control. And now, they've developed a weapon designed to suppress our abilities, eradicate the modifications you've triggered. If they deploy it, it's game over. Kate's mind raced, the urgency of the situation flooding her senses. Where is it? We need to destroy it before they can use it. Leo leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. They're keeping it in a secured facility on the command ship. It's heavily guarded, but we've pinpointed its location. We'll need to move fast and hit them hard. The clock's ticking. Kate's eyes hardened with resolve. We have no time to waste. We destroy their weapon, and then we bring the fight to them. As Leo and Kate prepared to lead the small team deeper into the Eldari stronghold, Kate couldn't help but wonder how far humanity could go in the face of such overwhelming odds. But there was one thing she knew for certain. They wouldn't stop. They couldn't. The future of humanity was at stake, and they would fight for it with everything they had. The hallways of the Eldari command ship were eerily silent, the air thick with tension. Kate, Leo, and their team moved swiftly and quietly, their enhanced abilities allowing them to navigate the complex labyrinth of the alien vessel without detection. The flickering lights above them cast long shadows, but their focus was unyielding. They had a single mission now: destroy the weapon the Eldari had developed to suppress humanity's potential before it could be activated. Leo led the way, his every movement calculated, his enhanced reflexes giving him the edge over the soldiers they had once been. Kate could see it in his eyes, the same fire that had ignited in the hearts of the rest of humanity's fighters. The awakening had transformed them, turning ordinary men and women into beings capable of feats the Eldari couldn't yet comprehend. As they approached the secured facility, the tension in the air thickened. The walls of the ship seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, as though the very core of the vessel knew they were coming. Kate's mind raced. The Eldari had prepared for this. Their ships, their defenses. They knew that humanity might one day rise up against them. But they hadn't expected this. The unpredictability, the raw, untapped potential that made humans more than just a species. They were the unknown variable, the wild card. "Eyes up," Leo whispered, his voice barely audible. "We're almost there." Kate nodded, her fingers brushing the side of the weapon she carried, one of the few tools humanity had managed to develop using Eldari technology. It was a long shot, but it could disrupt their systems long enough to give them an opening. They'd reached a reinforced door, the kind designed to keep intruders out. But Leo was already at work, his fingers flying over a hacked console. With a soft hiss, the door slid open, revealing a dark, sterile chamber. In the center stood the weapon, an imposing device, surrounded by intricate machinery and in shimmering force fields. It stood as a testament to the Eldari's fear of humanity's potential, designed to neutralize everything Kate and her team had unlocked. Kate stepped forward, her pulse quickening. This was it, the culmination of everything they had worked for. The turning point in the war. The weapon could destroy everything they had fought for, and they had no time to waste. "Leo, we need to move fast," she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. "You and the others set up the explosives. I'll disable the force field." Leo nodded, his eyes sharp and focused. "You got it, Doc. Let's make this count." Kate moved quickly to the center of the room, her mind working with precision as she connected her device to the Eldari systems. Her hands flew over the controls, bypassing their security measures with ease. Thanks to the ancient knowledge embedded in her own DNA, she could feel the hum of the machinery, the pulse of energy that surged through the walls. She was close, so close, to shutting it down. But then, a voice echoed through the chamber, one that sent a chill down her spine. "You think you can stop us, Dr. Albright?" The Eldari commander's voice, calm and condescending, resonated in her mind. "You have no idea what you're truly up against." Kate's heart skipped a beat, her fingers halting on the console for a moment. But only for a moment. "I know exactly what we're up against," she said, her voice ice-cold. "And we're ready." A flash of light filled the room, and suddenly, the force field flickered, then collapsed entirely. The weapon was now vulnerable. Leo's team had set the charges, and there was no turning back. "Get ready to move," Leo shouted, his voice a mix of urgency and determination. Kate hit the final key on her device, and the explosion detonated with a deafening roar. The room shook, the walls cracking as the Eldari's weapon crumbled before them. But as the smoke cleared, Kate could see that the fight was far from over. The Eldari weren't just going to sit back and watch. This was only the beginning. The explosion reverberated through the ship, the force of it sending tremors through the metal walls. For a moment, there was nothing but smoke, debris, and the deafening ringing in Kate's ears. But the sharp scent of burning circuitry and the thrum of energy systems slowly fading gave way to the harsh reality. The weapon was destroyed, but the Eldari were not the type to let failure go unpunished. Kate spun around, her heart hammering as she scanned the room. Leo and the rest of the team had already moved toward the exit, their enhanced abilities giving them a speed and agility that humans once could only dream of. But they weren't safe yet. The Eldari would be coming in full force now, and every second counted. Move, move, move. Leo shouted, urgency in his voice. They needed to get out, and fast. Kate took one last look at the shattered remains of the weapon. She couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. They had done it. They had struck the first blow, taken down the weapon designed to control humanity's potential. But even as she turned toward the door, she felt the weight of the situation crash down on her. The battle was far from over. As they made their way down the corridor, the ship seemed to come alive with alarms blaring, lights flashing red in warning. The Eldari were mobilizing. They had been prepared for a confrontation, but this was beyond what they had expected. They had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, and now they would pay the price. But Kate wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy. The more she thought about it, the more she understood. The Eldari didn't want to just control them. They feared humanity's potential, and that was why they would do everything in their power to destroy them. But Kate wouldn't let that happen. Not without a fight. "We need to get to the ship's main control center," Kate said, breathless but determined. "If we can disrupt their command systems, it will slow them down long enough to escape." Leo nodded, his face set in a grim expression. "I'll lead the way. Everyone, keep your heads on straight. We don't have much time." They moved with practiced precision through the winding hallways, every turn bringing them closer to the heart of the Eldari ship. The halls were quieter now, but Kate could feel the oppressive weight of the Eldari closing in. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had the element of surprise, and they had their enhanced abilities. The fear that had once gripped her heart was replaced by something stronger: purpose. As they reached the control center, they were met by a squad of Eldari soldiers. The battle was inevitable. There was no turning back now. Leo and the others dove into action, using their heightened strength and reflexes to overwhelm the guards. The Eldari fought back with precision, their advanced combat training giving them a brutal edge. But the humans were different now. They were faster, stronger, more adaptable. They fought with a ferocity the Eldari had not expected, one that caught them off guard. Kate's eyes locked onto the central console at the heart of the control room. She could see it now. Everything the Eldari had been planning. All the strategies they had devised to crush humanity's potential. She could feel the weight of it all pressing down on her, but she wasn't going to stop. She had come too far to fail now. She sprinted toward the console, her fingers flying over the controls. Sparks flew from the system as she hacked into the Eldari network, overriding their defenses and corrupting their command systems. The ship trembled beneath her as the countdown began. "We've got one shot at this," she muttered, her voice steady, even as the chaos raged around her. With a final keystroke, the system went dark. The Eldari ship was no longer under their control. They had won the first round. But Kate knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The lights of the Eldari ship flickered and hummed as their control systems crashed. The deep thrum of the vessel's engines faltered, then stilled, and the oppressive silence that followed was almost as deafening as the explosions that had rocked the ship earlier. For a moment, Kate allowed herself a breath. Just one. They had done it. The Eldari's command ship was no longer in operation, and their offensive capabilities had been crippled. But she knew this wasn't victory. Not yet. She turned to Leo, who was securing the exits with his team. His face was bloodied, but his eyes were sharp, filled with determination. "We've bought ourselves some time, but we need to get off this ship before they regain control," he said, voice low and steady despite the chaos that had unfolded around them. Kate nodded. "The ship's systems are in disarray, but it won't be long before they regroup and try to retake control. We can't afford to wait." Leo's team was already moving, setting charges around the control center to ensure that the Eldari couldn't simply patch things up and take the fight to Earth once again. The mission had changed in an instant. It was no longer about the weapon they'd destroyed or the damage they'd inflicted. It was now about survival. And with every passing second, it was becoming clearer that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in the technology or even the genetic modifications. It was in their unity, their will to fight against insurmountable odds. Kate felt the thrum of the ship beneath her feet, a constant reminder of how fragile their situation was. The Eldari would not let them escape easily. The question was, could they leave with enough to strike back at them again? She had no doubt that the aliens had underestimated humanity's resolve, but the war was far from won. "We need a way out," Kate said, urgency creeping into her voice as she looked around the command center. "Do we have an escape route?" Leo's eyes flashed to the communications panel. "I'm on it," he said, moving quickly to the console and scanning for a way to transmit a distress signal. "We'll need to get back to the fleet. If we can hijack a ship." A sudden, sharp explosion rocked the ship, sending them all stumbling. The blast was so powerful that the hull groaned under the pressure, and sparks flew from the control panels. They had been discovered. The Eldari had found them. "Get to the evacuation pods now," Leo shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "There's no time." Kate's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted toward the nearest pod. She could see the panic in the eyes of her team, but they moved with precision, their training and new abilities kicking in as they moved in coordinated formations. They were an army now, but more than that, they were human, and that, above all else, gave them the edge. As they reached the escape pods, Kate could see the looming shape of an Eldari ship just outside, its weapons primed and ready to fire. Their chances were slim, but as the pod doors slammed shut and the ship's engines roared to life, she realized something. The Eldari had underestimated them before, and they were making the same mistake again. The pod shot out into the void, the intense acceleration forcing Kate back into her seat. Through the small viewport, she saw the Eldari ship break apart in the distance, a final desperate shot fired at the escaping humans. But it was too late. The pod had already cleared the blast radius. Kate closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking in a steadying breath. They had survived. For now. And as the stars stretched out before them, she knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had taken its first step into the galaxy, and there was no turning back. The war had only just begun, and they were ready to face whatever came next.